Hello everybody. Today we're going to be working on an iPad Pro.
iPad still works. The touch works. So we're going to be replacing it. So first things first, let's shut it down. Right. Okay. And as usual, we're using heat gun to warm up the area around the edge of the screen. That's where the screen is attached to the frame, like by means of double-sided tape. So we warm it up, and then we use plastic cards, playing cards, to carefully separate the screen from the frame and lift it off the chassis. All right, so let's warm it up. I would start by carefully prying it with a metal blade or metal spudger tool somewhere on the top, just to kind of get me started with a card. So I carefully lift it, and then if there's enough room for me to slide the card in, I'll do so. Yeah. Don't forget about your eye protection, the goggles, and let's just slowly move around. Using this card basically ensures that you don't scratch the frame. Yes, you kind of have to start, but I'm extra careful here that it barely leaves any marks on the actual metal housing. So when you go with the metal tool all around the screen, all around the edges, you can actually leave a lot of markings on the framing because it's aluminum. And using the plastic tool, whether it's a card or a guitar pick, basically ensures that you're not damaging that or scratching that at all. So I'm going around the top, and that's where we have a bigger amount of adhesive. On the sides it's substantially less, so I think that I need to warm it up a little bit more. So as we get to the bottom, the most important area to be careful with would be the Touch ID button. So when you go with the card around this area, try to not go deep at all, because the cable for the button is somewhere in this area, and it's kind of very easy to damage it if you go deep here. So okay. Alright, it's all loose right now. So, and the connector for the screen is actually, if you look on the side, it actually is somewhere right in the middle. So it's right there. It's not like on the bottom or on the side as on the regular iPads or minis. So this is a little trickier, but it's still doable. So the way we do it is you just bring it up like that, and oh, let me turn it around. So you turn it like that, and then basically right here with the driver, you just unscrew it. It's not gonna be seen. Well, actually, let me try and do it like that. Yeah, so it's easier to do with a shorter screwdriver because the room here is kind of limited. So, but there is basically a plate of, if you see, like 3 screws and a plate that holds all the connectors. So we need to unscrew the 3 screws, 3 Phillips screws, and then remove the plate and then plug the connectors. Yeah, we have this shorter driver. One. It's easier done when it's laying down, and the size also matters. So the top center one is short, the bottom ones are a little longer. So here are all the screws, and here's the plate. And now there's 2 connectors that I'm gonna undo with a plastic spudger. This chip has to be soldered onto this part right here. You see, this is almost like an iPad mini first generations that were sold without the connectors. So you actually had to transfer that part from your original screen and solder it. This is similar but just a little bigger connector. Also, the iPad Air and some iPad and iPad mini charging ports are done the same way, so it's not a totally new process, but it's a little time consuming, and so your iPad repair is not 30 minutes anymore. You have to actually take the time and do this right so that both your screen, your image, and your touch screen work fine, as well as communication for the touch ID button. It's also done through the same board. So basically what we want to do now is carefully start unplugging and removing all these pieces of tape, unplugging all these connectors, getting down to the main one so that we can remove this whole board from this broken screen. And I'll put this screen aside for now. I was just showing you what we need to do. Right now we're gonna warm up these areas. Okay, so that's number 1. There's no connection here, so we need to undo this connector, and then this whole ribbon comes off. Yeah, let me warm up a little bit more. Okay. And now, just to be safe, I want to remove the Touch ID button. So unplug it first. And warm up this area a little bit more. So that the adhesive is loose and soft. And now we want to carefully separate the actual housing that holds it down, that little metal bracket housing that keeps it in place. There's a little bit of glue around it that you can just remove. And then slowly, no sudden movements, just carefully peel that. Yeah, it's a little complicated or harder to work on it since it's all smashed and cracked like that. So I'm gonna take my time here. Okay, so that's off. Let's see from the front. So I might as well just take this whole thing off the screen so that it's easier for me to work on. And that little thing that it holds on right now is just that clear glue that goes around the bracket, so I'm just gonna cut it. Okay, so now that the button is gone, we need to unstick it from the housing, from the LCD itself. But first we need to remove these two pieces of tape and then loosen up those ribbons that are running here and then flip it that way. So let's just warm up this whole area again. Okay, so we remove the tape. And I'm leaving these pieces of tape here for now. I will be reusing them, and I'm sort of keeping them where I would know where they go to. So this one goes here, that one goes here, that one goes here. So that's why I'm kind of keeping them in the vicinity of where they're applied, actually. Okay, another warming up session. Now let's see if the card works better here. Yeah, not really. Okay, that's stuck for good. We need to warm it up real good. Yeah, definitely want to take your time with this one. Okay, it comes off. So now we only need to do the sides, because those are actually the pieces that are soldered here on the bottom. Yeah, these cables are not that important to keep intact because that's part of the old screen that we don't really care all that much at this point. So that's why I'm a little less careful with them. Okay. So there we go. That's our area. I'm gonna expose it in a second. Another protecting film. Okay, so here are the connecting points that we need to carefully resolder in order to complete the job. So this whole assembly, this board with these two ribbons, is that what we need to transfer onto the new screen. I'm sure that eventually they'll start selling parts with these parts, or maybe at least this part attached to this, because this is also soldered. So maybe they'll switch to this, but hopefully it's going to be a full assembly where you just like all the other screens right now, iPad mini or Air 2, where you just remove the old one, unplug it from the motherboard, plug the new screen, seal it back, and you're good to go. But for now, that's the process, and that's the whole purpose of this video, is to demonstrate how it's done. So here are our connectors. Focus a little better. Okay, so let's first apply some flux and just run the soldering iron with some fresh leaded solder, just to refresh all the joints so that we can easily and safely remove the ribbons with the hot air later. So there's many ways you can remove this connector. You can do without hot air, just doing what I'm doing, and slowly pulling the ribbon up. You can remove it, but I'm just trying to do it as safely as possible without damaging the board. Okay, so let's start the hot air. I'm doing it on the lowest airflow one. I'm using Hako. Different stations will have different settings, but basically the lower airflow and the temperature, again, it will depend on the machine. I'll try from like 255 and see if that gets it going. If not, I'll just increase the temperature a little bit. Basically, I want to see that the solder melts. That will indicate that the area is hot enough. And maybe I will apply a little bit of a push, because there's also adhesive that holds that ribbon to the board on top of the actual solder joints. Yeah, I'll increase the temperature a little bit. And apply a little more flux. Okay, we got it off. And now we basically can put the screen away, the old one. We don't need it anymore until we are ready to assemble the new one. We only need to use the tapes from this one. So let's prepare this board for a new screen. So I'm just gonna run this solder again on these pads. So let's apply a little more flux. Okay, let's clean the area up with some alcohol. So now I'm going to clean the pads and put the fresh solder onto it so that we're ready to install the new cable. Okay. So I'm just gonna apply more flux and just remove all the solder, because it's basically a mix of old lead-free and leaded that I applied, and we just to be safe, we want to remove that altogether. Slowly. Okay, so the pads are all clean, and at this point there's basically two ways we can go about it. Some people, I know that they tin the pads before they apply the new part. Some people don't. I will tin it just a tiny bit, and we'll proceed. We're creating a tiny bit of like those cushions on the pads so that they're not completely like bare, empty. There's a little bit of solder on them. That will make the soldering process a little easier. Okay, so we got a perfectly looking part that's ready for the new screen. Yeah, let's bring it up here. Okay, so I'm just gonna fix the screen on my bench so that it doesn't slide. And now, there usually is a couple of protective films on the connectors, so you want to obviously remove those before you try to solder it. Okay, as you see, it's right. You see those clear plastic films, so I'm removing them. Okay, and yes, there's a little blue protective film that covers the tape or double-sided adhesive that is holding the ribbon to the board. So we want to make sure, that's why we want to make sure that the area is perfectly clean so that the adhesive works. And also I'm applying the flux, but very carefully, very controlled application. You don't want to put too much because you want that area for the adhesive to be still dry and clean. So I'm only applying it to the actual pads, no more, no less. Like so. So now there are, if you look close, there are these little squares. If you look right here, just put and there are these little squares that are used as like guiding points. So that has to match with the actual square on the board. So that you have to align those before you actually solder the two. So I'll start with this side. I'll show you. Let me try to zoom in a little more. Okay. Okay, so again, there is a square right here, and a square right here, and there's a corresponding square on the board right here and right there. So you want to align those two. You can actually see it through the little window right here. You can see it. So once you see it, in both windows, both left and right, it means that you're perfectly aligned. And we can tap a little bit on that adhesive. And it's holding it. It's not all that super strong, and plus we probably have a little flux going in there. I think I applied a little too much, but anyways, it's stuck just enough so that we can start. And connect it in a few points. And let's check if the other side looks aligned. I see that this one, let me zoom out. That one, as you see, it's perfectly visible through the window right here, as well as this one. You see? So both of them are fully, like both sides are fully aligned. So let me tap on this adhesive side a little bit, and let me apply a little bit of heat here, just so that it gets stuck in this aligned position. And then I'll just go through each pad individually in a second to make sure that we have a solid connection. So let's now focus on one section at a time. I'll actually start with the bigger one. Okay. Yeah, there's never too much flux. Okay, so now I usually apply a little bit of downward pressure with tweezers or some tool, just slightly, and when I tap on the pad I kind of keep that pressure around it so that I know for a fact that that pad got soldered. So let's don't keep the soldering iron on one area for too long. Can just burn and weaken the ribbon part of the connection. So if you need to retouch it, just in short sessions, do that. Don't like sit your iron and wait there for 10 seconds. It can damage. So you see, sometimes I'm just going through them a few times like that, back and forth, and I get the connection right. So you gotta have enough solder. Sometimes I would also do it like that, you know, like apply the solder onto the pad, and then Right now it looks fancy and looks solid, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's solid. So you actually have to redo them or go through them individually with, like I said, just keeping a little something right next to it to make sure that it sits all the way down on the board when you apply heat. Okay, so that seems to be okay. Let's switch to the other side. Okay, can zoom a little bit more in. Okay, so let's do the same. I'll just apply solder to all the pads first, and then I'll tap them individually, applying some downward pressure just to make sure they're all the way down. And make sure you don't bridge any of the two neighboring pads. Okay, so let me carefully clean it all up, and I'll do a test, a quick test, power on test, and see how it works. So I will just apply a little, that little adhesive, oh I'm sorry, not this one, back onto the pads so that those are all covered. You can technically use new adhesive, and sometimes we do that as well when this one gets damaged. Just like, you know, Captain Tape will work, but if you want it to look as close to the original as possible, then you want to reuse this. Okay. Although I'm not gonna attach any other tapes yet, I just want to power it on plugging this connector in. Okay, like that. And let's power it up. You can plug in the Touch ID as well, but for this test, we'll try without it. Actually, let me clean this up a little bit. And I'm using just a flat blade to clean out the sides. All the glue residue, the cleaner it is, the better it's gonna stick with the new adhesive. That's the simple rule. Okay, so now that it's clean enough, let's plug it in and power it on. Yeah, you probably won't see it, but I'm doing it from the side. It's just easier, and but there's only 2 connectors, so it's not all that. Make sure that you align it and center it properly before you press on it to connect. If it doesn't give you that nice distinguishable click, then it means that you're not aligning it properly. So realign it and try again. So let's see if we have an image, and it looks like we have an Apple logo. So let's wait till it boots. Okay, we logged in. Yeah, it says the Touch ID is not there. So let's just open any app. Actually, I'm gonna enable the assistive touch for just a second, just in case we need to go back to the home screen. And I'm just gonna do this test, the drag icon test. So let's grab any icon and try dragging it all across the screen like that. Back and forth, slowly and quickly and fast, I mean, just to make sure that it follows your finger all across the surface and you're not losing it at any times. Because if you do consistently lose it, let's say on one vertical line, like you drag it and it just loses it at a certain point, no matter where you drag it, means that one vertical line is not working. Or the same can be with horizontal. Sometimes it can be in the corner, or sometimes it can be the very, I guess, last section here on the right or on the left, and when you try to drag the icon to the next page, it's not going to work. So this way, on this screen, you see it moves both ways, no problems. I'm not losing the icon, even though I have these little bubbles on the screen that supposedly can cause the loss of that connection, but it's consistently following my finger, so I can assume, I mean, we'll do extensive testing off the camera, but the first test, initial test, shows that the soldering job was done correctly, and things are working as they should. So let's just shut it down. Okay, so I have to unplug it again right now. Okay, so now it's time to prepare the frame with the new adhesive to apply the screen. So let me grab the tape. Good rule of thumb here is you want to make sure that the tape is not overlapping like that at any point, and that you don't have like big gaps with no tape at all. So just make sure that you cover as much of surface that was originally covered by the tape as possible, and that's you'd be good. And this is a pretty big screen, so you want to make sure you have enough tape for it to be held down safely. So applying tape all across it. Sometimes I'll have these little areas that you can either fill this up or you can leave it open. I'll fill it up, but once we're done with all the sides. I'm just putting a tiny bit here and a tiny bit over here. Here. Okay, that seems to be all ready to go. Let's put that aside for a second. And finish the screen. So I'm just gonna disconnect that temporarily because I want to apply that big tape underneath the main board and remove this tape, this protective film too. Now I can apply or attach this one and remove this film as well as that. And it goes like that. Make sure it goes all the way in. And now we want to secure that with a tape. Now we can apply these big pieces of tape that were above the bottom ribbons right here. Like that. And the other side as well. Okay, and I think we're all good. We can also transfer this tiny little foamy sticker that goes onto this IC on this part of the screen. And so the last piece we have is the touch IC. Here we first want to make sure we reapply adhesive onto the actual bracket pads so that we can secure it on the screen, just like that. Let me clean it up a little bit more right here from the flux. And I'll also clean this area just to make sure there's no oily spots so that the bracket is sticking well and the button doesn't feel like loose or pressed down. So that's all clean. Now I just sit the actual button where it belongs, connect it. It's not like iPhone 7 or 7 Plus where that clicker is no longer existent. It's actually, this one still has the mechanical spring or that button that clicks even when the iPad or when the device is off. So we have that nice click, and I can fully stick it down by applying some more pressure. Okay, so everything is good. The button works. It feels flush, not sunk in, not kind of depressed, not sticking up. And the secret is yeah, make sure that you clean the little bracket, the mounting bracket, really good, the surface where the adhesive is. And another part of the secret, if you will, is that you want to keep that plastic circle that goes around the actual rubber membrane, because that is just the space that you need so that the button feels right. If you remove that circle and throw it away or forget it on the actual original screen and apply the button without it, then the button is going to be sticking up. So when you move your finger across like that, you would feel that it's actually catching it. You can feel that the button is higher. So that's the reason. And then you want to recheck and make sure that that circle, that plastic ring that goes right around the button, is actually not on the old broken screen, but you actually transfer it over with the button onto the new screen. Okay, so that one feels right. I like it. And now just final cleaning of the edges to make sure there are no oily prints or any imperfections. I guess one last bit of one detail is you can transfer the camera bracket from old screen to the new one because it doesn't come with one. Okay, so let's finish it all up. Now what I'm going to do is remove the paper from the adhesive, the protective paper, exposed adhesive basically. and then install the, or connect the screen, put the 3 screws in here, and then just stick it. So I'm removing the paper things. Like that. So now I'm connecting the screen again. Okay, they both click. We can technically power it on again just to make sure, but I'll just screw the plastic, the metal panel down with the screws. Remember, the 2 on the longer on the bottom and the shorter one on the top. That's the location of the screws. Okay, I haven't pressed it all down yet, just wanted to power it on one more time before I finalize it. And that would complete the repair. Okay, the passcode would be cut out of the video. So we're logged back in, and let's do the quick drag test, icon drag test. We're dragging it all across and it works. Okay. You can also drag this thing if you want. Let's check the Touch ID. Okay. Just as a test, we can try and touch and add a finger scan, and it adds it, so it means that it works, but we're not going to do it. Just wanted to make sure that the part itself works. Okay, so that completes the repair. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel for more videos of this kind, and like this one, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you. Bye.